Osiris.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Corner of Gray Street podcast. This is episode 86, and this is going to be our first installment of what we call Convos on the Corner. You all may be aware of Concerts on the Corner, but we're going to start calling our interview episodes Convos on the Corner because we're cool like that. I'm Bruce, and as always, I'm joined by Nolan. What's going on, man?
Not much. Just ready to talk to our special guest here, Bruce. This is a big time episode that we have been really excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, let's go ahead and get into it. I want to welcome Mr. Brandi Calhoun. This is the father of Rockbridge Guitars and many, many other things, but that's how you may know him best. Brian, welcome.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to meet you.
Absolutely. We really appreciate it. And we're excited about this. We've been wanting to do this for a long time and I have no idea why we just didn't ask you sooner, but I guess it was the right time because you said yes. So we appreciate that, obviously. But yeah, we're obviously heading into kind of the Christmas season here. So this is probably a big, busy time for you with all of the, Rockbridge and all the side projects that we'll get into here in a little bit. But yeah, Nolan, I think first we want to get into a little bit of who Brian is, where he came from, and how he got to where he is today to form all of those companies that he has formed so far.
Yeah, Brian, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
All right. Well, you guys can lead me with questions, but I guess it started. I was a guitar player growing up. More in the Nirvana kind of things in middle school. It was Nirvana, then Guns N' Roses, and then Led Zeppelin and classic rock, and then I diverged into bluegrass music. But yeah, I just I love playing guitar, and I had this guitar teacher named Steve Hope, who's the father of one of my good friends, and he's this wonderful guy. I'm still friends with him. Very eccentric. Like he had one of those houses. Every neighborhood has a house with like bamboo and blue bottles hanging from and somebody's painted the rocks and it's got a weird fountain in the yard, and then it's surrounded by like fab homes and stuff. He was like that house, like a wizard out, and he built instruments as a hobby. I thought it was amazing. I mean, I still remember I have the first memory of like when he started showing me this stuff, and he showed me a mandolin he built. I was in high school, like 8th grade, and just like I was like, how'd you do this? It's amazing. And he built all these strange like 4-necked instruments and 3-necked instruments and hurdy-gurdies and sitars and things he'd make up, and I just thought it was neat. So I thought, I'm going to make an instrument, and I started. In high school, I actually started with a hurdy-gurdy, which I don't know if you don't see those on the stage very, very often. But it's kind of like a stringed bagpipe. That's what it sounds like. I never finished it. I'm going to get back to it. In fact, maybe I'll get Matthews is, interested, so we'll see. But yeah, I did that, and then mandolins, and then I'm rambling, but I like had some informal apprenticeships with local instrument builders. There was a mandolin builder and a violin builder, and I was doing those. And then I started doing inlay work for a banjo company. I was like trying to find my place, and then I was like, I play guitar. I should build guitars, and that's when I went and teamed up with my Rockbridge Guitar, co-founder Randall Ray, and we started Rockbridge.
So you must have had some pretty good guitar chops yourself, because you went to Berklee College of Music, right? What was that experience like?
For me, it was miserable. So I grew up in Rockbridge County, Virginia, in a town called Lexington. Very, very, very small. I think the population when I grew up there, of like including the two colleges, was 5,000 people. or something crazy like, so then all of a sudden, and I got so into bluegrass music, and then all of a sudden I was in Boston. I don't know how they let me in, because honestly, but yeah, it was awful. People everywhere. We had heard of bluegrass. It wasn't I lasted one semester, barely. And then came back to Charlottesville, Virginia, where a lot of my friends were going to University of Virginia here at school. Came back and was in a bluegrass band, and sort of was doing that for a while. And instruments was a hobby. I had no idea what I wanted to do. I was like a very troubled teen, trying to figure it all out. And I thought maybe I'll go back to school or I'll get a job doing something. But then I don't know. It's this hobby of building guitars, and then it started as a hobby with Randall, and then I was like, man, these things, like one of our very first guitars, like I found myself playing it more than the guitar that my parents had given me as a high school graduation gift. I was like, these are good. I bet we could sell these. And Randall, who's nearly 20 years older than me, if he listens to this, he's going to get mad at me for saying that, but close enough. But he was like, you can't do this for a living. He had a business with his wife, a house painting business. Yeah, we can. And, I was young. I think about it now because I'm 43, and if, a 23-year-old came up and said, you should quit your job and start this business with me. It would take a lot of convincing, but I somehow did that with Randall, and we started Rockbridge, and in the early days, it was crazy. It was figuring out how to build guitars. He'd been doing it for 20 years, and he was doing a couple guitars a year. He was sort of this incredible guitar historian. Like if you name any guitar player who like, oh, he has a 1965 Fender and he sold it in this year, and like he knows everything guitar everybody's ever played. And he had a bunch of ideas, and I came into it with some ideas, and we just sort of early on were making guitars that we're like, man, these things sound good. And I think the best thing we did was not try and change it. At that point, we were both playing bluegrass. We were selling to bluegrass musicians. So we needed these like loud, powerful guitars that, people could play with a banjo player next to them. And people would come and say, can you build me a replica of a Martin or a Gibson? And we said, nope, we're going to stick to this. And it took a while to kind of break into the market, but glad we did it, stuck with it.
So that brings up a good point. Like, so what was your ultimate, when you go in and you start to make them, what kind of, you're not modeling it after a certain, famous brand. What were you pulling certain things from? Well, we like this about the Martin. It's got this certain warm sound, or over here is, the Taylor has this and it's more crisp, whatever it may be. What were you pulling, or, what was inspiring about some of those other, already established brands that you may have learned from before?
Yeah, it was exactly that. It was things we liked about Martins, things we liked about Gibsons, things we kind of tweaked. Randall already had a lot of ideas coming into it, and really in this first kind of dozen Rockbridges we made, which was, took us over a year, we kind of honed in, like, this is what we're going to do. And they, workmanship wise had a long way to come, but sound wise, we kind of found something and stuck with it right away. And at that point, still it wasn't like, this is going to be my living. It's just, we like doing it, and it's going to be a side biz.
That's awesome. Well, it seems like you've always been a good salesman. You've sold Randall on joining you and making these. So you mentioned Rockbridge County. That's where the name comes from. Where are you guys at now? Rather, you're a 4-man shop and produce 60 guitars annually. Did you kind of, I guess, when did it evolve into what it is now? I think you started in 2002. So how did you get from there to here?
Yeah, it started slow. The first, 6 years was just me and Randall, kind of like we both had he's still involved with his business, and I was still doing sort of playing music and side gigs in instrument building mainly, but trying to figure out what I was doing. And I don't know, we just sort of slowly started building more guitars and getting a better reputation. I was doing a lot of going to festivals, meeting artists, as a I was 22 or whatever, and I'd go up to these, grown-ups and say, "We check out this guitar my friend and I made," and wanted to see it. And I mean, it was a lot of that. And then you'd sell one, and then I'd figure out who their friends were, and I'd go and I'd say, "So-and-so just got one of these. You want to try it out?" And you sort of start getting a reputation when you get these players endorsing your stuff. I mean, and by endorsing, I mean literally just playing them. And then and the whole time, we don't really talk about this because it's complicated. I was in Charlottesville and Randall was in Lexington. We have the most, it's not, we don't run an efficient business around here as far as like a business place. I mean, I was building parts, he was building parts. We were driving and meeting halfway, like once a week. At that point, with like a guitar neck and a fingerboard in the car, and we'd trade off and eat at Subway, and we'd do that once a week. And then, so we did that for like 5 years. And then the next guy that came, Adam McNeil, was one of my friends growing up. His father came from, was a great woodworker, and Adam had all these crafty skills. And wasn't a guitar player, but was just like this incredible workmanship. And he came in and just really helped us get these things looking good. And we started doing it with him for a while. And then he was working with me in Charlottesville. And then it got even more complicated because I moved to LA for 4 years. And we, I mean, again, not how I would recommend to anybody how to run a business. But I was out there like meeting artists and I don't know, sort of growing the company and still trying to figure out what I was doing. But we made these big insulated boxes. I mean, these huge boxes with that foam that you build houses with. We got the 2-inch kind. We sort of built it around these boxes. So, you could jump on one, it wouldn't break. And once a month we'd ship these giant boxes. I was in Hollywood. We'd ship these giant boxes, and Adam was in Charlottesville and Randall was in Lexington. And then they'd be meeting halfway. I mean, it was just horrible. I can't believe we didn't get. And this was in like 2010 when the economy crashed and people weren't buying guitar. I mean, it was tough times to see if we were going to pull through. But we did, and it started picking up from there. And that's about the time as it started to pick up. We were sort of right on the brink of deciding like what kind of business we wanted to be. There was 3 of us. We were getting a reputation. We had some pretty well-known artists at that time. And it was like, are we going to grow, hire a bunch of people, and start like becoming a real company? Where I mean, at some point you sell through dealers, and then you grow and you get bigger, and that was sort of appealing. But also, I don't know, we all like had these other things we're into, and we decided, well, the other way to go is to pull our guitars out of shops. At that point, we had maybe a dozen or 15 like really high-end shops, Gruen's and Cotton Music and places like that. We pulled our guitars out of those shops and said we're just going to do custom orders, and we were getting enough orders that we wanted someone else. Got another one of my friends, Chickapig, who I knew at Berklee, and he'd been in a touring bluegrass band since the Berklee years. So for 10 years, he was traveling around the country. They won IBMA awards, and he was living that sort of road life and wanted to change. And he hadn't done any a ton of woodworking, but he was like a tinkerer, like good at setting up good instruments already, like really good at just sort of figuring out new jigs. And he came on. He was sort of a great compliment to our team. I moved back to Virginia, and that's how we have it. So now it's the three of us, Jake, Adam, and me, in Charlottesville. And the shop is currently in my basement. I'm in my office now. So downstairs is a guitar shop. Randall, who is a complete hermit, lives in Lexington and maybe sees a person besides his wife, once every couple of months. But and so now we have someone do the road trips for us, but we're still like, every 2 weeks we start 3 guitars and finish 3 guitars. So, if in a perfect year we build 72, but with stuff coming up, we're kind of in the, mid 60s most years now. And, that's how we done it. And many times I've had the thought, should we grow? Should we hire more people? I get people calling for jobs all the time. And it's tempting, I think we could sell more guitars and, sort of go that route. But man, I'm just glad we did. Every time, I'm just glad we didn't, because we're this tight knit team. We're friends with each other. We got a lot of flexibility, and we're able to put so much into each guitar. And I think if we grew, sort of lose that. I think I'm rambling here. Is this how it's supposed to go?
That's good. That's perfect. I mean, it sounds to me like that's the exact way that you would do it. That is your identity, is that small town, that small communal vibe. And that's why you said you didn't like Berklee as much. So I think that when you said that and you were talking about expanding, is that, you've probably always made that right choice, because that would be like the antithesis of who Brian Calhoun is at his core.
Yeah, it's been tempting here or there, but I'm just glad we didn't. And I think there's a giant advantage to small shops, whether it's guitars or whatever you're doing. There's just, you put a lot more care into it. I mean, a factory-made guitar, if you pulled out your calipers, might be more perfect. But, if you pulled out a magnifying glass, you might find, these things are handmade. And so it's sort of like Oriental rugs, it's like the little thing that's like, oh, it's not quite perfect. That's what makes it so beautiful. I think we get a lot of that in this. And I mean, and the other thing, the example that I like is, I imagine, some giant factory that's making, 500 guitars a day or whatever. They have their specs, they're hiring these workers who aren't musicians and might not care, and I know they know this because I watch YouTube videos, but they have their specs. So like say a spruce top, they're going to say, all right, it has to be 3 millimeters, and they're going to run everyone through the thickness standard at 3 millimeters. Where a small shop, you could have 2 pieces of spruce that look the same and kind of feel the same, but once you get it out, you're like, oh, this one's a little stiffer, and it's, it has this tone to it. When you ding on it, like, we're going to take it down to 2.9 millimeters. Yeah, it's that there's little things. So we're able to do that, on every part of the guitar, the top, the back, the way that the braces, and it's sort of how it all comes together that I think makes these things special. And of course, we're 90% custom orders, and so I'm talking to the clients, whether they're famous artists or collectors or whoever, and figuring out what they want, and that's kind of an art that usually we get right.
Seems like it. Okay, so want to dive in to a part. I know the listeners are super eager to hear all of this, but a lot of people probably know Rockbridge because it's the guitar that Dave Matthews plays now. How did that happen? How did you become friends with Dave? Can you kind of take me through the order? Did you become friends and then he was like, oh, I want to try your guitars, or was he interested in your guitars and then you became friends? And how'd that go?
Yeah, I mean, I met him really early on, kind of in passing, maybe once or twice. And then a really good friend of mine, Ian Kingston, works at Red Light Management, and has been, working closely with him for, she was getting into music at the same time I was. My bluegrass band played at her high school. I was 1 year older, and we became buddies, you know, when we were 17 and 18, stayed friends. So she got into the music business. I got into the music business. We were both meeting people or whatever. And then, you know, I remember her saying, like, I just have a feeling you're going to be friends with Dave one day, or something along that. I mean, way back. But then and it was in 2009, she took 2 guitars out to him. I think maybe 2008, somewhere around there. And they were small body guitars. He still got them, but, you know, they've never been on stage. And she took him out there and kind of like left him for him, and came back, was like, I don't know, you know, he seemed distracted, you know, fingers crossed. I mean, at this point, we had a few other artists, and I hadn't really listened to him before, you know, at this point either, but I knew, you know, obviously he'd be great. At this point, it was like, man, I hope he plays the guitar. And then we heard, then it was like, I bet you can find it. There was a article, it's an online article, I forget what publication, but he came out and he was like, my new favorite guitars are these little Rockbridge guitars. And like, that's before I even knew he wanted to buy them. So he played those for a while, and, you know, we sort of started seeing each other here and there more because of the guitars. And then I guess it was in 2010, he and his guitar tech, who I'm friends with, Craig Baker, they were like, why don't you build something he can try on stage? And that's when we started the SJs, which were like the, you know, kind of what people think of the most, which is, you know, it was, I think his was the first one we made or second, and he loved it. And it was like, that kind of started it. So I got to give credit to Kingston, because she took the guitars out there, and she also at the same time introduced me to John Alasia. And this was, you know, I was in LA and Alasia was there, and we hit it off. So I became really close with Alasia, and through Alasia, Matthews and I started hanging out more, and that's kind of how we became buddies. So you know, I guess he played the guitar before he really knew, you know, who I was.
That's pretty amazing. It seems so much like Dave. Like Dave would just be like, "Oh yeah, I like this," and he just says it publicly, and you're like, "Wait, what?" Yeah, it just seems so much like a Dave story. So obviously, you know, you gave him those. How did it come to be that he began playing it on stage? You talked about that, but you know, you talked about artists being like, I need 3 millimeters here and this, that, and the other. Is Dave like that? And how many customizations?
I like this, or, you know,
yeah,
or, you know,
just whatever. And you make it, he plays it, and if he likes it, he tells you. Yeah,
I mean, I feel like, you know, I'm sure he's had ideas, certainly on aesthetic. I mean, he's an incredible artist, but on the sound, I don't remember. I mean, maybe I'm wrong, but I don't remember him saying like, I need more bass and the whatever. You know, it's more like, I like this, or, you know, let me try this one. It was more like that, and then you know, of course, every guitar we were building, like, you know, that wasn't for somebody else, I'd be like, check this out, and you know, that's fortunately for us, he plays in like 19 different tunings, and they want a different guitar for each tuning, and, you know, all of a sudden it was like guitars all over the place on that stage.
That's incredible. I mean, that's got to be a good feeling, because I know he was like playing a Taylor or several Taylors for a long time. So he goes like Taylor to Rockbridge. Then did you kind of see things like take off more after that for you, and kind of like reach out to more artists?
Absolutely. You know, I don't want to, you know, I would never, he's helped us. I mean, he's helped me obviously with all this other stuff so much, and not just by like, you know, getting the word out. I mean, he's a smart, you know, he gives me ideas on things, but yeah. I mean, big time. I mean, I think, like, just for instance, he played it. Jason Mraz saw him play it, got in touch with me, and then we built Mraz some guitars. And then Mraz played it on some late night show. Richie Sambora from Bon Jovi watched the show and was like, man, I've never heard an acoustic guitar that sound that good on TV. Sambora got in touch. He bought all these guitars. And like, it just started, you know, and Dave wasn't our first artist, you know, but I've been building guitars for 7 years at that point, but it made it easier. And then, you know, it was just sort of once you get a lot of people, then it just sort of did like that. And then the other thing I did that really got us a lot of artists. So if we were, you know, back in those days, we were probably building 40 guitars a year. We would build maybe 75% of those were custom orders, but then we'd build the demo models because I needed guitars to show people. If like Sambora said, let me see, I mean, literally when Sambora said, let me see a guitar, I brought like 9 guitars to his house. He came down and, you know, played them all. In fact, the first one he picked up was over there. And I thought just because he was an electric player, I like set it up with super low action and light gauge strings. I mean, he picked that thing up and was like, I mean, it was buzzing and it sounded absolutely terrible. And I was like, oh, I did this all wrong. And then he goes, that's the best fucking guitar I've ever heard. And it was like, I was like, really? You know, he bought all these guitars and I forget what I was even talking about. But oh yeah, so what I did is we had these demos. I started lending them because I realized there's several times where I would get in touch with an artist, you know, through my friends, you know, whether they be musicians or people in management, or, you know, I'd get an opportunity to sit down with some artist, and you go sit down with these people, and a lot of times it's like before their show, and they clearly don't, you know, it's stressful. I got like 15 minutes to try and sell some famous person a guitar in a like loud room with, you can hear drums sound checking out here, and it's like, you know, so and I realized that is a terrible, you know, percentage that you're gonna like. These people are used to everything, want something from them or whatever. So I started to do is I'd bring a couple guitars in there, and they'd sort of pick them up. And if I sensed that they like something, I'd just be like, hey, do you want to borrow that so you can try it not here? And, you know, y'all get it back in a month or trade. And that was really good. So I started having musicians all over the country borrowing guitars and taking them on tour. And a lot of them, I mean, like Warren Haynes borrowed a couple guitars, and then he was very particular. He'd be like, I want a little more of this or a little more of that. And I'd be like, I wouldn't just get the guitar back and let that go away. I'd be like, try this one, you know? And he borrowed guitars for like 2 years. And then he did an acoustic album up in New York. And I went up there. He was like, man, can I, you know, check out some more guitars? I went up there, and he ended up using 7 Rockbridges on that album. And then after the album, he bought 3 of them. So that was like 3 years of him borrowing guitars. I had people all over, you know, I'd lend them to studios. So there's a lot of that that's kind of how we got our word out, I guess.
Yeah, because your artist list is absurd. That I was checking out the website, and we knew some of them. I mean, you know, friend of the pod, Rustin Kelly. Shout out to Rustin. But we didn't even know that Tim and Fonz have Rockbridge guitars. And then there are a bunch of others, but we'll stay there for just a second. Was that just Dave being like, I play this, you should play that? You know, how did that work? And what guitars are they actually using? Because I had no idea.
Yeah, I mean, Stefan just reached out and said, you know, he just ordered it. I don't know if he talked to Dave about it or not, but he got the same model as Dave, but different woods. He got African blackwood on it, which makes it like really bright and sort of crisp. And, you know, I think he loved it. And Tim, yeah, I guess Craig Baker, I'm sure had a big role in that. But yeah, he wanted another Dreadnought. He used it on stage for a year or so. You know, a lot of our artists, you know, a stage guitar and an at-home guitar, it's tricky.
Yeah.
You never know. And you know, some artists play their favorite guitar on stage. Some artists keep their favorite guitar at home. You know, it's a funny thing. And I'll also say that a guitar on stage, like, it's not. I remember when you know, we got these, for instance, on stage with D&B. I mean, it's like I was so new to internet and all that stuff at this point. I was like, "Man, all these Taylor people hate us," and are, and it's interesting that these artists are going to play whatever guitar they want to play. Nobody's going to convince somebody by giving them a guitar to play on stage, But also, you can't. If you think about an acoustic guitar, if I strum an acoustic guitar in this room, it's versus on stage, man, it's like it's going through a pickup, then it's and you got a sound guy for that, then it's going through this and this and this and speakers and how it's recorded. Like you have no idea what that guitar sounds like. Like the band is picking what they want it to sound like coming through. The sound guy's saying this is good to mix or whatever. And my actual opinion on acoustic guitars is that it's subjective. This isn't necessarily, this is a $10,000 guitar. It's not necessarily better than a $200 guitar at a pawn shop. If you like that one better, it's like just whatever you like, So
if I spent 10,000 on it, I think I'd like that one better. Number one.
So.
Number two, I wanted to go back to something because you brought it up. I wasn't sure if I wanted to ask it or how aware you were at times, and you seem to be a little bit internet aware of when Dave did switch guitars on stage, and some of the, you said Taylor people hated you guys, but just, some of like people are mean online, and comments at times, and just, have you seen, or did you ever notice like the shift, and what did that?
It's stressful if I look at, how it is. You can read 1,000 people saying that that your podcast is great, and one person will be like, "You guys sound like morons." And you're gonna
That's exactly what happens, and it's what we care about the most.
Yeah. So I do my absolute best not to read it. When I see it, I have that tendency to want to chime in, but whatever, because A, maybe, they're hearing it through the recording, like I just said, and B, maybe they do, maybe, this other guitar is better for me, because I'm not saying that it's better than this or that, I truly think it's subjective, people are saying what they like.
Well, regardless of whether it's the Rockbridge guitar or whether it's the different sound coming through any of the, all the different pickups and all that different stuff that they've got going on, Dave's guitar over the past half decade to decade is as crisp and is coming through the mix as it pretty much ever has, and it is on point. So on this podcast, we're going to let you take all the credit for that and go ahead and take a bow, Brian. Thank you.
How it's going through, if it sounds amazing, it's not all the guitar. He's got this incredible team out there.
And if it makes you feel better, people were angry when he switched from the Chet Atkins to the Taylor. So anytime
I put up a post of him, there's at least 3 comments that are like, "Bring back the Chet," or whatever.
Yeah. No, we as a podcast fully endorse Rockbridge, and the sound has been, like Bruce said, incredible. So, okay, do you have a tally? Do you know how many Rockbridge guitars Dave uses on stage? Or
well, yeah, there's 5 different tunings, so there's a guitar for each tuning. And that's one neat thing about guitars, whether they're ours or whatever company, it's the size of the guitar and the woods that determines how it's going to sound acoustically, at least. All the other stuff, the inlay, that doesn't affect the sound. It makes it look clear that. But it's the size and the wood. Assuming you're sort of building it the same, and it's gonna. Our SJ sounds like our SJ if we build it with rosewood, but if we build it with mahogany, it's a different sound than SJ. And so so those guitars that he's using in each tuning, I didn't have anything to do with it, but I presented them in standard tuning, because give me a guitar in another tuning, I have no idea what to do with it. But for some reason they figured it out. They liked it for this or that, and
that's awesome.
Great.
So
Do you have a favorite of his that you've made? Personal fave?
I don't know. You know, I tend to like smaller guitar. I mean, I know that everybody wants the SJ, but I personally I play guitar like slouched on a couch. So I like the kind of that very first guitar he got back, before he was playing on, in like 2009, like a double O. Those things are awesome for me. But
love it. You obviously, we're talking more about kind of the business relationship side between yourself and Dave and other artists and things. But, as many DMB fans know, you guys have a, personal relationship as well. Everyone knows the infamous slap videos and all the other things that you guys have that have been out there about you guys, just hanging out. I think y'all have a couple of videos of playing guitar, which, by the way, a couple of those things that you and Dave are playing on guitar, that needs to become songs on albums and stuff. So, put that in his ear.
I
But
was
what's it?
trying to get him, I was teaching him bluegrass and he liked it. But I tell you what, he'll pick up a guitar and be playing on a couch or something. Many times I'd be like, go try and play. I can't play with him. I have no idea what he's doing. I can't recognize his chords. I have trouble with them. I'm like, I can't follow him for 2 seconds. So the only thing I've ever played with him is when I teach him, fiddle tunes from my bluegrass days.
Well, they're awesome. So continue to do that. Just anytime you come around him, just and just stare him down so it gets in his ear. But what's it like kind of being able to, kind of shoot the shit with Dave and just kind of you've become good friends with him, obviously, and, without obviously going into too much there, but what's it like having more than just a business relationship with one of the artists that obviously is, essential to the Rockbridge brand?
I mean, I've become friends with a lot of my artists and, a lot of people, everybody I was around growing up was musicians. And I mean, honestly, he's just such a good guy. Like we became friends before I started, checking out his shows. So it wasn't, I don't know. I had lived in LA and met all these sort of LA musicians. He's like just a down to earth, wonderful person. It's kind of all I can say. I mean, just such a good hearted guy. All I can say about it.
Yeah, that's what it seems like. I mean, obviously we're huge fans and just have idolized Dave for a long time. So it's good to hear from someone else that he's as nice as we all think he is.
A role model, man. I mean, so good person to everybody that gets close to him.
Yes, absolutely. Did you ever, in your wildest dreams, think or envision this for your company, or when you were dropping out of Berklee? Like, it's had to have been a wild ride from there to here.
No, I haven't. And as you know, I start all these other random things. I still don't know what I'm going to do for a living. It's kind of how I feel about it. Because Rockbridge is perfect, and we don't want to change it. Nobody in the company wants to change it. Like we're busy, but we've got flexibility, and I don't know. It's really nice. But I definitely, I don't know. If you plan on something, or I would get down. One thing I did notice that I anytime I meet an artist, whether they're a musician or they paint or they write or whatever they do, like I have this huge level of respect for them, no matter how successful they are, because I do something that I've noticed and that I don't like and didn't like is early on when I dropped out of school and I was still sort of at the age where everybody asked me, where I went to college, and I had to tell them I didn't go. And, what do you do for a living? And I'm like, I build guitars. I mean, they'd be like, oh, my granddad builds birdhouses or whatever. Like, I could just tell they didn't take it. Like, I didn't have a job, And then all of a sudden, it's perception. We get these artists, whether it's Dave or somebody else, if they like them, and I could say, well, we build if you always get it, who have you built guitars for? And early on, it's like all these bluegrass people that I liked a lot, but they hadn't heard of. And you name them, and they'd be like, you know, and you could just sort of feel the like, gosh, they didn't respect it. Where all of a sudden you can name somebody, you know, famous, and they're like, you know, they light up, and all of a sudden they like it, and it's like it's not fair. And I think about that with like people playing in a band at the coffee shop. I mean, they've put so much work into it, and they're so good, and like, you know, but most people are sitting there drinking their coffee, not listening to them. But if that person all of a sudden had a #1 album, people would be like, "Oh, you're amazing." It's like it's not fair, you know. And I really think about that when I think about other artists. And I mean, I've dealt with it. I mean, in my other businesses, man, like when I would tell people I make board games, I mean, dude, people would look at me like I was a complete idiot. But if I was like, they're selling in Walmart, it's like all of a sudden, I mean, that's not fair. You know, that game was just as fun before we sold a lot of them. Our guitars sounded the exact same before we had famous people playing them. You know, it's just not, it's not fair. So, I don't know. So I've never been a huge like starstruck person or with these different artists we work with. You know, if I meet somebody, like I want them to like the instruments, or if I meet somebody in my other lines of work, I want them to like what we're doing. But it's never been, I don't know. The only time I was a little bit starstruck that I can remember is when The Rock came to my house. But he's not a musician. And I think I was more like I had small arm complex than I was starstruck. Because man, he's a beast. I felt like I felt weak for the next couple months.
Did he buy a guitar?
Yeah, he bought our. We built him our 200th guitar, and he was there for hours. And he like picked out his wood, and he was so nice, and he you know, he was like very into it, and you know, would text me. We inlaid part of his tattoo on the guitar. And so,
oh, that's cool.
I had just gotten a cell phone. You know, it's just figuring out how to use the cell phone. I'd get like a text, and it was, you know, The Rock's nipple with like chalk circling the part of the tattoo he wanted.
That's a good segue right there, because you're a professional. I wanted to ask about the custom inlays a little bit, because they're pretty incredible, especially if you know, we've seen obviously the ones on Dave's guitars and a couple of others, but when I was clicking through, you know, on your guys' website, there's a bunch more photos on there, and I think you've posted some on social media as well. But so you're a little bit of an artist, number one, and like number two, just talk a little bit about that. Like, you know, how do you plan that out, and how does that process go to be able to do that? Is it kind of like a tattoo artist where you draw it out first and then you do it on the guitar? How does that work?
Pretty much. I mean, every inlay you see, first of all, keep in mind somebody else's, like it was built for somebody. We're not just like putting inlay on a guitar. So it's sort of somebody else's idea or concept, this or that, and I'm working with them. But I don't know. I always liked it. Like inlay was sort of big. Like when I got started, like before Rockbridge, I was doing inlay work for like those sort of traditional instruments. It was more common on those. So we do like big ornate inlays on mandolins, and then I got that job doing custom inlays on banjo work. I like it. It's just like, I don't know. And now, I mean, I'm pretty removed from like the day-to-day building process on Rockbridge. The only thing that I I'm talking to the customers and, you know, doing other stuff, but the only thing that I'm doing consistently on the guitars, I mean, I get in there and set up the guitar help where it's needed, but the other three guys, you know, are amazing. If they all quit, you know, that would be our last Rockbridge probably. I still do the inlay, and I just like it, man, because, you know, these other companies that I have in Rockbridge, you know, you're like, it's hard to like. I remember when the first decade of Rockbridge, you'd like start with some materials, and 5 hours later, like you changed it, you'd like built something, and it just felt so satisfying. And inlay work's still like that. You get these little pieces of shell, and, you know, you cut it out and put it in the guitar, and you like feel like you've done something. Where, you know, with a lot of jobs, like you don't have that tangible, like, look at this thing I did. And so I don't know, still really like it, the inlay part of the guitar. And it's like a tattoo, customers. I mean, like lately, for instance, a lot of people have been getting their kids' artwork on guitars. Like, to me, that's so awesome. It just sort of ties them to it. I mean, literally, the kids will like draw something with a crayon, and then I cut it out of shell, and it like looks Picasso-esque, and I don't know, it's awesome. We get all kinds of weird requests for inlay and this and that. So anyway.
Nice. Well, I mean, it's beautiful work. I love seeing whenever anybody posts about it. Like, it's such a cool personalization that you guys do. So we just talked about it a minute ago, but your other projects, your other businesses, you sell board games. You don't just sell board games. You created Chickapig, which we both love. Such a great game, so much fun. I got the Chickapig books for my son, and now my daughter has started in. She handed me the Chickapig book the other day. That's awesome. So we love it. But okay, I know you're a creator. You said you love tinkering with things and everything. How did Chickapig come to be, and can you kind of talk through how it got popular? And I know Dave it became a thing with Dave as well, and then he joined in.
Yeah. I mean, it was so random. I mean, I'm not like I play the same amount of board games as your average not board gamer, holidays here or there. Besides chess, I like chess. But I played a board game at with some friends, and I thought it was boring. I was kind of complaining. I was like, there's some things about it that I was like, this doesn't work. Like, why'd they do it like this? And I read the side of the box, and it was like millions sold. It's like, what? I'm going to make a board game. And I just sort of started thinking about it. And I don't know. It was like several months later. And everybody's always like, how high were you when you made Chickapig? Nope. I was driving down the road, and I was like, I wonder if that, if this piece did this and this piece did this. And I sort of had this idea. And I went home and I got a chessboard and little paper pieces. And I was like, that's not enough squares and a cardboard. And it was like, I don't know, a couple days later, I had this thing, and, it was like characters, and I made one, like little Play-Doh. And I took it to a couple of friends' houses, and two of the first groups I took it to, well, one was Ian Kingston, who got me, who I talked about earlier. She's been a massive help in every area of my life over the years. I played it with her and her husband and kids, and she was like, oh my gosh, you need to do this, and you need to write a book, and you need to, she was sort of my cheerleader. But one of the earliest groups was Matthews and some of our other friends, and they were like, I think they thought I had made it a long time ago. You can watch that video Walmart put out. It's like a great little overview on Chickapig. He interviews with me. But I realized, like, everybody wanted a copy. So I was like, okay, I made 3 more. Gave one to Ann, gave one to him, gave one to another friend. And I'd be like, they're playing this when I'm not there. They text me pictures, and they were very early adapters, and like helped me with, you should do this. I was still tweaking rules. And it became this thing. And so, Dave and 2 of our other friends, Fenton, everybody is Fenton in y'all's camp. And then our late friend, wonderful friend, Mark Rabine, who's, business minded, we just started sort of talking about, you could do this, you could do this. And I don't know, I liked it at that time because it was completely different from Rockbridge. It's very different from Rockbridge. If nobody's played Chickapig, Chickapig hybrid, sort of simplified chess with a cow that poops on the board. And anyway, I'm like, I was not thinking about selling a lot of these. I was thinking, I wanted to figure out that it worked. I thought I'd make, 20 of them for our friends. It'd be our little thing. But so I did. And then I would find out so-and-so wanted one. I mean, there's some guy was like, bought one. I was like, I'm done making Chickapig. I need to track this guy down, because he's like, I'll give you $300 to make me one. It's like, really? So I was like, okay. I mean, I barely knew this guy. So I made him one. And then I just started liking to make it, because I wanted to figure out how to make a lot of them. This is nights and weekends. So I was like, instead of the first ones where I took a Sharpie and literally cut out wood circles and drew the swirl on the cow poop, I figured out how to stamp 50 at a time. Now I hired my mom was helping me make parts, and I was paying a couple other people make parts, and then I'd call a box company to make me these things, and call this company to make me these things. I was sort of hiring a couple people around to piece them together, and I thought I was going to sell these at the farmer's market. And we just sort of started making more and more, and it was it was the encouragement of my friends who were like, you should turn this into a business. And at that time, you started doing research. Every single board game was launched on Kickstarter. And I didn't necessarily want to do a Kickstarter, but it was like, we had the idea. It wasn't like, give us some money, we're going to go think about this. It was just like, let's see how many of these we need to make. And so, we did that with, Dave was a partner along with some other friends, and, he helped put it out. And I think we sold 1,000 games. And we sort of thought, that seemed like a lot. It was a lot to figure out how to make those. And then I was working with some local companies and this and that. But that wasn't going gangbusters, But then what it did is I caught the attention of Buffalo Games, actually not through Dave, but through John Wayne's son, Ethan Wayne, who I'd sold a guitar to. He knew a guy that was worked in licensing with John Wayne, and there was some casual conversation where he met this guy from Buffalo Games. And he was like, my buddy's got a game, you should check it out. And the guy called and was like, hey man, we sell games in Target and Walmart. And man, yeah, we sort of started playing with them, and all of a sudden ended up doing a deal with them. And they were it went gangbusters there for a while. I think in 1 year we sold 250,000 of them, of the main game. And then I made Chickapiglets, and then I wrote the books, and we had stuffed animals. And anyway, that was Chickapig. Crazy. And now I've spent the last I've never really talked about this on any interviews, but when COVID hit, we kind of we lost our listing in Target and Walmart. And sort of the game sort of died. I built this whole grassroots thing with that game, playing them in bars, and we made these big boards. And then when COVID hit, I don't know, just sort of Target and Walmart are tough, man. Mass retail. I'm going through it again right now. You're competing for shelf space with the biggest brands in the world in the toy department, or in whatever department you happen to be in. So we lasted 2 years, I think, in those mass retail, and then we lost. And then I don't know, just sort of. It stopped becoming the focus of attention for one, but also just sort of these things tend to go in waves. But for the last several years, we've been trying to turn it into a TV show, and then I could talk about that. But it's been a roller coaster. Right now we're we're at the bottom of the hill. So we were right at the top of the hill a couple of times. So we'll see. Hopefully we'll get back there with some major companies. It looked like it's going to be a huge thing, and that's an ordeal. But anyway, that got me obsessed with like writing for television. So now I got all these other things I'm hopefully we'll see. But yeah, that was Chickapig.
Awesome. Hold on. I need to know like more about this TV show though, because nowadays, and I'm sure this is going to be, something, as you said, you're starting to be obsessed with. You're going to succeed. Like it's going to happen. As we see with like everything you kind of just do here. But is this something, if you wind up doing it now with kind of the age of streaming, and putting things out, on all these different platforms, and it's not just like trying to get a TV deal. It's like, hopping around to Netflix exclusive, Amazon exclusive, or whatever. How do you, if you've gotten that far, how do you envision a Chickapig TV show going?
I mean, yeah, we have incredible. I mean, I can't go into it too much, but we have an incredible team with people that are in that world. Did all those pitches to all those big companies, landed one, lost it, landed another one. Long story. It's a long process, and a lot can happen from when you sell a TV show to when it goes on air. So it's just kind of a crazy whirlwind.
Well, fingers crossed for you, because that'll be awesome. We will definitely tune in, especially with the kiddos. So yeah, we're looking forward to that potentially. Before we get into the kind of the main thing that you're on to now, real quick, the card game 25 Outlaws. Obviously Dave did artwork for Chickapig, and then that as well. Where did the inspiration for that come from? Obviously it's kind of a derivative of other card games, I guess a little bit, but also creative in and of itself. And what was that like, just doing a second game kind of?
That was totally random. I had this idea for I think we were playing poker or something, and I was like, what if you could play poker but you could rob people? Basically was the beginning, and sort of like literally made this poker game with like ripped up pieces of paper, and we played it, and it was, I don't know, it was fun. We played it for like, I don't know, a few times, or never really got into it. And I think it was like a year later, Dave said, you should make that game, that poker game, and let me do the artwork. I mean, I had forgot. I mean, I was not onto it. And I was like, sounds like a good deal for me. And so we went back. I developed it at this point. After Chickapig, it became much easier because of my relationship with Buffalo Games, and they're just an amazing company. I sort of developed the rules with them, and I mean, I think it's a great game, but we really enjoyed playing it, but it's significantly more complicated than Chickapig. In retrospect, we should have kept it simple. Now we have all these like it's like one of those things you have to learn this before you figure out what this is, but you don't know what this is till you know what that is. You know what I mean? You have to like play it a few times before you like get the sense of the strategy. And those just don't work in mass retail. People want to like one card and slap something or whatever, and it lasted one season and sort of ran its course quickly. But it was fun. I haven't played it in a long time. I'd have to read the rules, and then I'd still
same.
Yeah,
I've still got it, but we played Chickapig more.
Yeah,
same. Yeah, we've got the was the OG Chickapig that came in the like burlap bag.
Oh yeah, man.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
There's several versions of OG Chickapigs. I lose track, but yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure you've got the true OG one. You and Dave.
Yeah, what I want to do is, I mean, I'd love to rekindle the game side of Chickapig, and I've been thinking about making now with hopefully with Buffalo, making big boards, because that was always, to me, like that's how we got it going in the grassroots. Nobody had heard of it. We took these big boards into this bar down here. They're magnetic, so you could like have your beer, and I mean, it was
awesome. I was going to say that's perfect for a brewery.
Yeah, it's completely like for adults, and you can drink and play Chickapig, and it was fun. And then like we switched and we were marketing it to kids, and that was really, that made me fall in love with making stuff for kids. But at the same time, like it started for adults, and we completely switched. And I kind of want to start like, let's get some big boards and get drunk again and play Chickapig. Like maybe, and maybe if this TV show doesn't pan off, we'll ditch the whole like preschool thing and we'll go, go adult spin instead. Anyway.
Oh, that's what we do.
Yeah. But yeah. That got me into it.
Okay. So you've kind of delved back into games and retail for kids now. I know this has been a project for you. It's been on your mind right now, especially ramping up for the holiday season.
And
Tinkertar.
For those of you listening that can't see what this is, I mean, it's essentially a kid's guitar. And I had Chickapig and all these games, and I had Rockbridge, and I wanted to combine my worlds and make a kid's guitar. And I don't know, I sort of had some ideas about it and talked about it. And then actually it was John Alasia called me one day and was like, man, you're always drawing animals, because I am. And he was like, you should make some animal guitars. It's like, gosh, that's a really good idea. And I got online and looked around, and like you could find some one-off animal guitars, but there was nothing like in the mass market. And I thought, well, that's kind of crazy. Like, I'm surprised you can't buy a dinosaur ukulele or whatever, And so I made one. I made a dinosaur-shaped ukulele with 4 strings, and it, the body looked like a dinosaur, the neck was the tail, and I made it, and I took it to a friend's house, Ann Kingston's house. So we're all a little group, and I took it, and her kid was like turning 5 or something, and it had a birthday party. Everybody wanted to play this thing because it looked like a dinosaur. And you guys have kids in this age range?
Yep.
If you've seen a kid with a ukulele or a little guitar, you've probably seen it before. It's this, and I'd be like, push your finger here, and they couldn't do it. And I'd be like, try and hold this chord, and they couldn't do it, or it was, the chord is boring, and they give it up. I had a line of people who played the ukulele, and nobody wanted to play it more than 10 seconds once they got there, because they can't.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I don't know, literally that night, it's like, why can't they? Kids are starting violin and piano with Suzuki method when they're 3, and kids aren't starting ukulele in early music educational programs until they're like 8. And it makes no sense. But then it just sort of occurred to me, if you go to that piano, dun, 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 it's like one thing at a time. In a violin, even though it's got 4 strings, it's got an arched fingerboard, they're starting with melody lines. They're not starting with a chord. They're starting with one thing at a time, melody lines. So I just sort of had this idea of like, I'm going to make a 1-stringed instrument. So that elephant back there, I made that. I took it back to the same group of kids, and right away, with one string, right away, there's nothing to do but this. They were making sounds on it, and I thought, well, that's amazing. And then I started teaching my friends' kids how to play. I taught a 3-year-old how to play this. Three, and you could learn all the little. It's just so simple with 1 string. So I started making these. This was over COVID, and I took it to Buffalo games, and they were kind of like a little interested. We had some companies over in China make some prototypes, but the problem was the fret jobs. Like, I was making these in my guitar shop, and putting professional fret jobs on it so that it plays clean like that. But with it's hard to do a fret job. And if you're trying to make something that's affordable, like they're coming back terrible. Like, they do this every other fret. It just wasn't working, and we were sending it back, and it just sort of fizzled out. And then COVID happened, and I was, messing around with a bunch of stuff around here, and I thought, well, violins don't have frets, and everybody I know that started playing violin when they were young has incredible like pitch, because you got to make these micro adjustments to play in tune. And so I made a fretless Tinkertar, and like right away, it's a little plunkier, but like right away it sounded good. I mean, I literally drew in the position markers with a Sharpie. And then I started working with some local companies, started printing the fingerboards. And now you can print this color-coded numbered system. So you can teach a kid, you can say, open 77997, 55442. You can teach a kid, so simple. And so it did two things. It let us teach how to do this, and it made manufacturing a cinch, because now it's essentially it's like one piece of wood for the body. It's got a panel on the back, and then the fingerboard, and that's it. So we were able to make these, for nothing. And man, I gotta say, it's crazy, because these kids, I mean, I've seen it over and over. Parents will be like, oh, I bought this little guitar for my kids. They can't play it. And I'll say, well, give me 5 minutes or 1 minute, depending on how old. A 3-year-old, they got to really want to do it. A 6-year-old, they're going to be able to play a song in under a minute. And it's like, yeah, they could maybe learn that on a real guitar, but it's going to be, you got to have dexterity to get it in there in between the strings. This is just so simple that once you learn melody, they do it over and over again. And so, I mean, you can tell I believe in this so much. Like, I see it work. We're out in the big stores right now, and it's like that scary thing I told you about, where you never feel like you're selling enough to make the people happy. But this one, I feel like even if it doesn't succeed there, man, it's like, I hope it grows, because I'm getting all these music education specialists reaching out. We're making a curriculum with Kaplan, who makes curriculums, and we're going to try and get it into school systems, because I'm like, kids are playing recorder when they're super young, and they're not going to stick with it. But if they can like play on a little guitar, they don't realize it on one string, but they're learning. Even if they just do this, they're learning how to coordinate their hands. They're learning how to push the string down. They're learning rhythm. They're learning that if you push, the higher you go up the neck, you're changing the pitch. And, if they're old, maybe they play it for 10 minutes. You can do this. You can go, and those numbers. And then you can pick up a real guitar, and you can be like, oh, it starts on 12. It's just going to be a lot easier when they pick it up. And then they can start to figure out, well, I can do it here. But it's like a balance bike, easy access, just to spark an interest. We don't expect people to play Tinkertars their whole life. Although this thing sits by my desk, and I'm addicted to it, and I play it all the time. But anyway.
Well, Dave and Rustin Kelly play it.
Yeah, man. I mean, my friends have all been so kind to me in helping me get the word out.
Well, we're just waiting for him to appear on stage. Maybe Dave will bring it out in Mexico for Dave and Tim.
Yeah. Oh man, Dave E1 solo with the Tinkertar.
Yeah, he's gone, guitar. He had the what is it, the Griffin, the little tiny one, and he's got a ukulele. Now it's time for a Tinkertar, I think.
Awesome. That would take some convincing, but we'll see.
Oh man, well, it's such a cool product, and I know like firsthand exactly what you're talking about. I got my son a guitar that had a small guitar that had 3 strings, and he just kind of hits at it, and I'm like, oh, try the chord right there, and it's just too, it's just too hard. So I think you've nailed it, and you're gonna just have just a whole fleet of guitar virtuosos who they're gonna be incredible, and then they're gonna get good enough. They're gonna be like, oh, well, now I need a rock bridge. So you've got it all figured out.
I mean, I've seen kids start guitar. My friends' kids, or we hear stories, start guitar from this because you learn just one little melody. It's like a kid will play that same melody a gajillion times, but they're picking up and they're figuring out, and then they're making up their own stuff. It's so simple. And I mean, the problem, I see, I try not to read them, but you see the comments, people like, oh, why don't you start with a real guitar? I mean, this is from when they're too young to start with a real guitar, or even adult. You know how many adults, since I made my first Tinkertar, was like, if you could teach me, then I'm hopeless on a guitar. And I mean, any adult in the world, I can teach them a song in under a minute. And but when it's sitting on a shelf and somebody doesn't take the time to really think about the benefits of it, and they think, oh, why would I buy that thing for $25 when I can buy this ukulele over here for $40? It's a real instrument. Well, it's because your kid probably won't play that thing. But this one, hopefully they'll play it enough and that they'll like it enough that then they'll want that ukulele.
That's a good point. And it's something that I've been kind of eyeing a little bit lately because my dad actually did buy my son a ukulele, but he's not yet 3. He's 2.5. So he's kind of like, well, I'm not going to give it to him yet. Just kind of want to make sure that he's ready for it, sort of thing. And I said, well, look at this thing that I found. And it was a couple of weeks ago. And I was like, this might be, something, now or at his 3rd birthday, something like that. In that time frame that he can kind of learn that first. So if we are interested in that, where can I or others buy these things? Like where would we be able to get them?
Well, if you want this one with the flames, you gotta go to Walmart. Go to Walmart. It's in 1,800 Walmart stores, and it's on Walmart.com.
Nice.
The Tiger is in every Target, and then the rest
Tiger,
of
I like the Tiger.
The rest of our models are on Amazon or in we're trying to get into local toy shops. Local toy shops are amazing because there you've got somebody that can explain it. On the shelf in mass retail, it's yet to be. We're about to find out if it works because it's people just have to see it in a package and be like, oh, maybe I'll get that. I suspect that the ones that we're selling in mass retail are selling as a toy, and then hopefully when they get home, they're like, whoa, this thing actually works. Amazon, we're able to link from our little videos, because if you go, we sort of just started, but our tiny social media presence, you can go and find these little kids that are playing stuff. It's so cool. And it's starting to roll in, people I don't know, kids I don't know, lots of music teachers. But if you just look up Tinkertar, you should be very easy to find.
Perfect. I think that's I think Santa, it's a great gift for Santa to put under the Christmas tree.
All we got to
Here
do
in a
is
couple weeks.
get Brian a big white beard, just put on the Santa hat, and he's the one. Santa's making those Tinkertars.
His workshop.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Okay, so one more question about all of this and the Brian Calhoun enterprise of creations. What I know you mentioned the TV show maybe, but what's next for you?
Oh man, well, I've got a couple half-written books, for kids, longer books. So we'll see where one of those goes. But I love this TV idea, and now I got this, so I'm like, how about a music show? That could be. Who knows if it'll never see the light of the day, but that's, I might have several notebooks filled with ideas and that sort of stuff.
It seems like you have a ton of great ideas, so can't wait to see your future and big things coming. I can feel it.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
absolutely. All right, Brian, before we let you get out of here, we've talked your head off enough
You guys,
this evening.
y'all have listened to me ramble. I always feel like my voice is like right behind my brain. Like,
It's our favorite thing to do is to listen to our guests talk, though. So I mean, that's why we want more and more and more, and what we wanted. But what we typically do at the end is kind of a rapid fire. And some of these, if you want to do a kind of an audible and answer for yourself, that's perfectly fine. I know that you weren't really. Some of these are D&B related, so you may not have the answers that some may have, but I think that you might surprise us here. So we'll start off, and I'll kick it off. Nolan, Brian, favorite Dave Matthews Band song?
Gray Street. I think.
Boom.
Salesman. He's the best.
Yeah, it was meant to be. Do you have a favorite album?
I don't. I'm not good on my song titles, what's on what album, all that kind of stuff.
Well, how about, you mentioned some of them before. How about your favorite band? Obviously besides DMB, obviously. But what's your favorite band, whether it be now or of all time, just in all of your entire life?
Led Zeppelin. I mean, it's like I work in music. I actually listen to less and less music when I'm not at work, or I like very sort of simplistic. I like Willie Nelson and a guitar. It's nice, easy listening. That sort of stuff.
I heard Brian's a big podcast guy. He listens to Corner of Gray Street podcast all the time instead of music.
All the time. Favorite concert venue you've been to?
Gosh, I mean, I like a nice little band in the corner of a bar. I mean, I just still really enjoy that sort of listening area. Not too loud, but I love local music. I mean, I like going to concerts, of course, but
Downtown Mall in Charlottesville is your scene then.
Yeah, Miller's.
Right, that's right.
So, okay. So who's your favorite guitar player of all time?
Oh man, I don't know. Because I got my whole bluegrass side, like
Bela Fleck talked about a lot of bluegrass guitarists when he was on. I can't remember some of the names, but yeah, he loves them.
Those guys. I mean, these people I grew up with, they are incredible that nobody's gonna have heard of, but wow, I mean, like growing up, I was a big Allman Brothers fan. I mean, Jimmy Page, just that sort of stuff. Classic rock.
I like it. Do you have a guitar, maybe one that you're most proud of making?
No. I wish I could have thought of something to make up fast enough to have said yes, but I don't think I do. I mean, I'm proud of, like, it changes, We'll do one for this, we'll do one for this person, and I'll be super proud of it. We'll do one for that person, I'll be super proud of it. There's not one specific one, I mean, it's a neat thing, man. Like, we've done guitars. We did a guitar for a guy whose his father had an old Gibson and remarried and then passed away, or like got something happened, but his dad passed away, and his dad's new wife didn't get along with the kids and sold it. And it was like, this guy was older, he's probably 60, but he was like, I always wished I could find my dad's guitar. And so we made a replica visually of that guitar, because it was a sort of a shape that we already used, but with our stuff. And we drilled a hole in the back of the peg head, and he put a vial of his dad's ashes in it. And I was like, I mean, that's a badass guitar. I mean, it's
Wow.
it's like the ones that sort of, you know, now we've got guitars that are 20 years old. We're seeing them passed down. It's neat, man. These things are going to outlive us. So it's not like one that goes to a celebrity. It's ones, you know, unless they feel that way and it's like their thing. But it's the ones that like have a meaning somehow, you know.
Great
Yep.
answer. That was awesome.
Yeah, that is a fantastic answer. I kind of have a feeling you don't have an answer for this, just kind of, but you may, and you may surprise us. But if you could have just one artist, and it may not be a dream artist, it could be someone local, bluegrass, just whatever, to use a Rockbridge guitar and to come to you, Brian Calhoun, and say, "Make me a guitar," who would it be that currently isn't using it?
You know, I don't know. It's tough. Well, I'd have to jump back to my childhood people. So it'd be like Slash, you know, or Jimmy Page. So, yeah, that kind of
Hell
thing.
yeah! So not Taylor Swift. Got it.
She's great.
Her too. Everybody needs a Rockbridge.
Yeah,
Paul
exactly.
McCartney, come on.
Oh my gosh.
Well, you know, I think that's about it. That's going to wrap up the rapid fire for us. So, you know, one more time, why don't you hit us with your Tinkertar, where we can get it, and so some details on Tinkertar and where we can follow and find out more about it on social media.
Thanks. Yeah, I probably did, because there's several places to get it, and each place sort of has specific models. Probably just Googling Tinkertar will be the best spot to go. We're on Tinkertar Music, I think, is our social media handle. I don't run that page, but I'm involved in it. And yeah,
Sweet. Well, we'll make sure to post some of that on social media as well, and we will link to depending on how many different places sell it. We will link to at least some of those in the most common places to buy it for sure in the podcast description.
you know, don't say this, but where we need to sell it is Walmart. Amazon's crushing it. Walmart is like, are they going to take us next year? You know,
Fingers crossed.
they could put
We
a
will.
there. You know.
Then you can find that link to the Walmart Tinkertar right there in the podcast description. You just look there right now. You can click right through it. We'll put some of those in there and also link those social media handles as well. Brian, where else can people find you and you know, your work, Rockbridge and stuff, social media or elsewhere?
We have a website that hasn't been updated in many years, but then Rockbridge Guitar, you know, Instagram is sort of our, you know, it's 80% Rockbridge and 20%, especially around the holidays, it's going to be 20% toys. You know, during the regular year, it's 95% Rockbridge. It's kind of like my personal one. You know, I mean, Randall doesn't have social media. Adam doesn't have social media. Everybody I work with is a hermit.
That's awesome. That's why you guys are such good guitar makers. Just locked in all the time on the guitars. Okay, one last thing. Can you play us out for the outro? And your choice, either Tinkertar or maybe some bluegrass on the SJ.
I'll play you the same song on both. We'll go. That's on a Tinkertar.
All right, now Brian's going to play us out on the SJ, the Rockbridge guitar here, the beautiful one right in front of us. Thank you, everybody, for joining us this week. Thank you to Brian again for joining us, and we'll see everyone next time on the next Convos on the corner of Gray Street.
All right, I'll try and play that same song I played on the Tinkertar with my extremely rusty bluegrass chops. Right.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Osiris.